You are 29 years old, sitting on the edge of your bed at 11 p.m., and your investment account just crossed $100,000 for the first time. You do not feel what you expected to feel. There is no music swelling in your chest, no sudden sense of arrival. You feel mostly tired. The specific tiredness of someone who has been pushing against something heavy for 6 years and just realized, without quite noticing the moment it happened, that the thing finally moved. Because that is what the first $100,000 actually is. Not a celebration, a grind. There is a reason almost every investor who has ever talked honestly about this milestone describes it the same way, as the hardest, slowest, most thankless money you will ever build. Charlie Munger said the first $100,000 is a bitch. And he said it in front of a room full of people who had made hundreds of millions of dollars, because even they remembered exactly how true it was. But here's the part almost nobody explains clearly. It is not just hard. It is disproportionately hard compared to every dollar that comes after it. And once you understand why, you understand something that changes how you experience the entire rest of your financial life. This is the story of the 6 years it actually takes to build the first $100,000, and the specific, permanent shift that happens the moment you cross it. Act 1. The math that nobody explains. At $5,000 in your account, a 10% market return earns you $500 a year. You could not tell anyone this number without feeling slightly embarrassed by it. $500 a year is less than what you'd make working a single overtime weekend. It does not feel like investing. It feels like a rounding error attached to a much larger and more important number, the number you're personally contributing every month, which is doing almost all of the actual work. This is the part of investing nobody puts in the thumbnail. In the earliest years, compound interest is not the engine. You are the engine. The market is a passenger, contributing a small, inconsistent amount that barely registers next to your own monthly transfers. You are 23. You are contributing $400 a month into a taxable brokerage account and a separate Roth IRA, split across both, automated the day after each paycheck. The account grows almost entirely because you keep feeding it, not because of anything the market is doing. Some months, the market takes a bite out of what you contributed. You watch $4,800 in contributions become $4,400 after a rough quarter, and you feel, for the first time, the specific discouragement of doing everything right and watching the number go the wrong direction anyway. This is the year most people quit. Not because they lack discipline in general, because the specific kind of discipline required here has no reward attached to it yet. You are working hard for a return that, mathematically, cannot possibly reward that hard work yet, because there isn't enough principal in the account for the market's percentage gains to mean anything. You do not quit. You do not know exactly why, except that the alternative, stopping and having nothing, feels worse than continuing and having almost nothing that's growing embarrassingly slowly. The first rule. In the earliest stage of investing, your savings rate matters more than your investment returns by an enormous margin, because there is not yet enough money in the account for returns to matter. This is not motivational language, it is arithmetic. A 10% return on $10,000 is $1,000. A 10% return on $100,000 is $10,000. The exact same skill, the exact same market, the exact same percentage, and the second number does 10 times the work of the first, for the exact same effort from you. Act 2. The years that feel like nothing is happening. Year 3, you cross $28,000. Year 4, $47,000. The growth looks respectable on paper, and it is. You are doing everything correctly, contributing consistently, staying invested through 2 market corrections that each felt, in the moment, like they might undo everything. But the emotional experience of these years does not match the arithmetic. It feels flat. It feels like you are working exactly as hard as you were at $5,000 for a number that still does not feel like it means anything when you say it out loud to yourself. You develop a habit during this period that will matter enormously later, though you don't know it yet. You stop checking the account daily. Not because you've become more disciplined in some abstract sense, because checking it produces almost no information. The number moves by amounts too small to be meaningful on any given day, and watching it not move becomes its own kind of quiet demoralization. You check monthly instead. Then, by year 4, closer to quarterly. This is an underappreciated skill that the slow years accidentally teach you. the ability to stop needing daily evidence that something is working. You are building a kind of patience that has no name and no recognition, and you will not understand how valuable it is until you meet people years later who never developed it. People with much higher incomes than you who cannot leave an investment alone for more than a few weeks without checking it, tinkering with it, second-guessing it into underperformance. At $52,000, your coworker Priya asks you what you're doing with your money. You tell her, plainly, index funds, automated contributions, nothing sophisticated. She seems almost disappointed by the answer, like she expected something more interesting. You understand the disappointment. $52,000 built through boring, repetitive automation does not make for a good story at a dinner party. It is not supposed to. It is supposed to work. The second rule: the years where nothing feels like it's happening are not wasted years. They are the years where the habit gets installed so completely that it survives contact with boredom, market fear, and the complete absence of external validation, which is exactly the kind of habit that will still be running once the money is large enough to matter. Act 3. The last stretch. Year 5. You cross $71,000. And something starts to feel different, though you can't yet name what it is. The account moved $6,400 last year from market growth alone, more than your annual raise. You notice this specifically because it is the first time the market's contribution has been large enough to compare, in the same sentence, to something you'd normally measure your own effort against. It is a strange, quiet moment of recalibration. The realization that a passive, faceless system has just outperformed, in dollar terms, a full year of your own professional advancement. You do not stop contributing. If anything, you contribute more deliberately now, because you can see, for the first time, the shape of what you're actually building rather than just trusting the theory of it. The theory was always correct, but theory and lived evidence are different experiences, and year 5 is the year the evidence starts arriving in amounts large enough to notice. You are 28. You get a raise, $6,200 a year, real money, the kind that in earlier years would have gone partly toward lifestyle and partly toward savings, negotiated with yourself in the moment based on how deserved it felt. This year, you do something different. You increase your automated contribution by the full amount of the raise before your first larger paycheck even arrives, adjusting the percentage before you have the chance to feel what the bigger number feels like in your checking account. You never adapt to spending it, because you never actually experience having it to spend. At $89,000, you feel something shift that you don't yet have language for. The account has started producing return numbers that, for the first time, exceed what an average month of your own contributions adds. You are 29 years old, sitting at your kitchen table on an ordinary Tuesday, watching a single quarter's market return add more to your account than 4 months of your own $400 transfers combined. The third rule: the final stretch toward the first $100,000 is where the psychological transfer of power happens. The moment you start to feel, correctly, that the machine you built is beginning to do more of the lifting than you are. This feeling is real, and it is earned. And it is also the exact moment where most of the actual acceleration is still ahead of you, not behind you. Act 4. The night it crosses. $100,000. You are sitting on the edge of your bed at 11 p.m. on an unremarkable Thursday, and the number on your phone reads $100,412. You do not screenshot it. You sit with it for a long moment instead, doing something closer to accounting than celebrating, running the 6 years backward in your head. The $400 a month that felt impossible some months and easy in others. The 2 corrections you sat through without selling. The year you stopped checking daily because the checking hurt more than it helped. The raise you redirected before you ever felt its absence. 6 years. $100,412. And the feeling, when it finally arrives, is not triumph. It is something quieter and more permanent. The specific, settled knowledge that the system works, because you just watched it work, slowly, in front of you, for 6 real years of your actual life. This is the part almost nobody explains about the first $100,000, and it is the entire reason the number is disproportionately important compared to every subsequent milestone. It is not a financial threshold, it is a psychological one. Somewhere in those 6 years, without a specific date attached to it, you stopped being a person who is trying to save money and became a person who saves money, automatically, as a fact about who you are, rather than a discipline you're actively performing. The habit is no longer a decision. It has become identity. And identity does not require willpower the way a decision does. It simply continues. the way brushing your teeth continues without a daily negotiation about whether today is the day you'll skip it. The fourth rule, the first $100,000 changes everything, not because of what the money can now do, though what it can now do matters enormously, which the next act will show you, but because of what building it did to the person who built it. You crossed a threshold inside yourself before you crossed the one on the screen, and the second one was only possible because of the first. Act 5. What the second $100,000 actually looks like. You are 31 now, 2 years past the Thursday night on the edge of your bed. The second $100,000 takes 2 years and 4 months, less than half the time the first one took, despite contributing almost exactly the same monthly amount you always have, with only modest increases. This is not because you got smarter. It is because the machine, at $100,000, finally has enough mass to generate returns that meaningfully compound against a real base. The exact arithmetic from the first act, now working in your favor at a scale that actually matters. At $100,000, a 10% return is $10,000. More than an entire year of your contributions in some years, arriving without a single additional decision from you. At $150,000, that same 10% is $15,000. The percentage never changed. The market never became easier to predict. What changed is that the base got large enough for the same effort, the same skill, the same boring index fund strategy, to produce a completely different scale of result. You watch your account cross $200,000 at 34. Your annual market gains in a good year are now larger than your entire salary was when you started this journey at 23. You have not become a more sophisticated investor. You are doing, functionally, the exact same thing you did in year 1. Automated contributions into diversified index funds, held through corrections, left alone. The strategy never had to change, only the base did. You think, sometimes, about the version of yourself at $5,000, discouraged by a $500 annual return that felt like an insult next to the effort required to earn it. You do not feel superior to that version of yourself. You feel something closer to gratitude, because that version did the actual hardest work in this entire story. The work of contributing consistently into an account that was not yet rewarding the contribution, for reasons that had nothing to do with effort and everything to do with math he could not yet see the other side of. The fifth rule. Every dollar after the first $100,000 is easier to build than every dollar before it, not because you improve as an investor, but because compound growth requires mass before it can meaningfully compound. The first $100,000 is where you build the mass. Everything after is what the mass does once it exists. Somewhere tonight, someone is looking at an account that reads $6,000, or $14,000, or $31,000, wondering if any of this is actually working. They are doing everything correctly. They are contributing consistently. They are watching a market return that, this month, amounts to less than what they'd earn working a single extra shift. And they are wondering, honestly and reasonably, whether the whole thing is worth the discipline it's asking of them. Here is what nobody told you clearly enough, early enough, for it to feel true when you needed it most. The math is not broken. It is simply front-loaded with difficulty in a way that has nothing to do with your effort and everything to do with the size of the base you're working with. A 10% return needs mass to matter. You are, right now, building the mass. This is the hardest and least rewarding part of the entire process, and it is also the only part that makes every subsequent part possible. The first $100,000 will not feel like an achievement while you're building it. It will feel like 6 years of a discipline that produces almost no visible reward, punctuated by market drops that make the discipline feel actively punished rather than rewarded. This is normal. This is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. This is the actual, unglamorous shape of the hardest financial threshold most people will ever cross. Keep the automation running. Keep the percentage climbing with every raise before you feel the raise in your checking account. Stop checking daily if checking is hurting more than it's helping. The account does not need your attention to work. It needs your consistency. And when it finally crosses, on some unremarkable weeknight that will not feel like the moment you expected it to feel like, you will understand something that cannot be explained in advance and can only be earned through the 6 years it takes to arrive at it. The first $100,000 changes everything, not because of the number, because of who you had to become to build it.